Okay. Oh, all right. So hope you guys can hear me. All right. So, in a given requirement elicitation process or stage of any kind of, project, there are basic questions that we really have to underscore. We need to underline, make sure that, there's clarity on that. So the hows, right? So the first stage, I ask a question, you guys talk about, requirement gathering, somebody answered it, it's great. But, we have the hows of requirement questions, right? How, the house of requirement questions. So when we talk about a house, what you as the person conducting the interview, conducting the requirement station, you need to sort of know this so that you'll be able to ask the right questions, right? When you know this, you'll be able to write and elicit the right appropriate questions from the subject matter expert or the stakeholder that you're going to be talking to. So a key question among this is going to be like, how would you use this feature, right? So yeah, you want to be able to ask the stakeholder. These are basic questions, in you trying to understand, the current state system, trying to ensure that you have good understanding of the current state system as you guys are trying to maybe re-architect the process or maybe understand their pain point, the challenges, etc. So you guys can craft solutions that's going to be useful to them. How is a good starting point. So how would this feature be used? Is this feature a process? If so, what are the steps that are in there? What questions you need to ask to ascertain the steps as well. And then how might we meet this business need? How might we think about this feature a bit differently as well? And then how will we know this is complete? These sort of questions are very important, so that when some of this ambiguity and some of this completeness, etc., you have some clarity of some sort. So the hows are very important. Let's talk about the where, the where's of the requirement as well, right? So again, basic questions, very basic, right? Where does the process start? Who start what? Is it a customer? Is it somebody will have to trigger something that will send an email, text message, whatever to the customer for them to also act on it? It's like you going to the ATM, right? You have to maybe insert your ATM card, correct? There's no way that you can go to the ATM and then if you don't insert the ATM card, you don't insert your debit, Visa, MasterCard, whatever, the process will sort of initiate, right? So where does the process start? Somebody will have to trigger something. You guys already did. I think I already gave you guys the use case assignment, right? You guys did about 4 assignments. Oh, you guys should have done that.
Yeah, we did the ATM use case. So I think it starts with first inserting your card and then being verified.
Okay, all right. So yes, you guys have done all the use case assignments. I think for you guys did the Coca-Cola, the vending machine use case assignment, the ATM use case assignment, the gas pump station use case assignment, and then there was one more. I've forgotten the other one.
The elevator.
The elevator.
Yes, the elevator. Yes. So the elevator, the lift assignment as well. So, yep. Where does the process start? Who does what? To trigger, the process. So where does the process start? Where will the user access this feature? Right? Different features, different system, they are accessed at different places, right? So key question, basic question. Where will the customer gotta be to be able to access this feature? Is it going to be on a mobile? It's going to be your Android, iOS, it's going to be a web, it's going to be a physical location, like a vending machine, whatever. So where would the user access this, right? Where would the user be located physically when using this feature as well, right? Where will the results be visible? So they want to see something. Is it going to be printed? Is it going to be displayed for them to read? And that's it. And then you call it a day, etc., etc. So it's very important as well that we talk about the where component of requirement gathering, right? And then let's talk about the when. When is also very important, right? So We have the how, what, when, who, etc. So when would this feature be used as well, right? When would this feature be used? We need to know, when we want this to be deployed, when we want this to be out there. We may have already existing platform. We're changing something. This is going to be a new enhancement and a new feature to this. We need to know when we will decommission or it will be deprecated or something like that. We need to know when. When do you need to know about this, right? When do you need to know about this? When will the feature fail, right? So in the process, something can happen. Somebody can do something. This week, was it this week? I was working on, I think, a mortgage application. Yeah, something that I've never seen before. A negative, you guys might not understand this, but hey, I'm just going to say this quick, and later on I might show you guys. When we come into domains, I might maybe point some of these things out to you. Negative, cash to close or something like that. I think I saw something, and it is not supposed to, trigger that kind of negative, cash to close on a mortgage application as I was working on. And I saw something like that. And so something has failed in there. We need to be able to understand, okay, what will sort of, culminate into that type of behavior, that type of action, right? So when will the feature fail? Key question is very good question. When will we be ready to start, right? When? These are all good questions for when. And then who. So we have the who requirement question as well. Keep note, this is going to be some pop quiz in the future, right? It's going to come up in the pop quiz in the future. So not today. Who. So who will use this feature? So we've talked about some of these things, the actors, the personas, the end users, who is going to be using this feature. We need to be able to understand as well who is going to be using this feature. Very important. Who will use this feature? Who will deliver the input for the feature? Maybe the customer will have to enter something. Somebody has to enter something as well for the customer. So who will deliver the input for the feature, right? Who will receive the outputs of the feature, right? Confirmation, printout, etc. Who will receive this, right? Who will learn about the results of someone using this feature? Is it a stakeholder? Is it a staff employee, customer service support team member, etc.? How would they liaise with this? How would they interface with this process, etc.? Somebody needs to approve something for the customer to know the process in the stage where he or she might be, etc. Very important step. Who will receive, who will learn about the results of someone using this feature, right? Different applications, sometimes it's automated, but not all the time that application might be automated. Somebody has to also act somewhere within the organization for maybe the end results or the output, the desired output to be out there for the customer or the end user, right? How can I can I ask to learn more about this, right? There might be multiple stakeholders. No, who can I ask to learn more about this? There are multiple subject matter experts within the organization, different people that can share a key process that are in there. So ask the stakeholder, they will point you to the right direction. They will point you to the right key people so that you can learn more about this process. You can even have a user experience, right? They will guide you to the process and you say, oh, okay. So from point A, we move to point B, we go to point C, we go to point D. So this is how it works as of today. So this is how the user experience is. So if we're changing something, you have an idea that, oh, so this is at point C. Point C is where the actor, the user will have to do this, do that, do this. Okay, this is how it works. All right. And then you get it, right? So during requirement elicitation process, basic questions, right? Be able to, have in the back of your mind some of these things so that when you're asking questions, you'll sort of, you know exactly what you want to communicate. Very important. I think the last piece here is going to be, okay, we have the what here. What do I know about this feature? You got to ask yourself questions as well, right? Not just asking the stakeholder. You need to ask yourself, Do I know all that I need to know about this platform? Sometimes you know that no, your knowledge, what you learn about this feature application is very limited. And so you got to ask yourself questions. What do I know about this feature? If you know that you have some more, that there are a lot of things that you need to learn, go ahead, ask questions, learn it, right? Or what assumptions am I making about this feature that I need to confirm? So sometimes we all have our own type of assumptions, type of our own preconceived, maybe prejudices, etc. That this is how we know that ATM works, right? But until you get to the ATM, you insert the card, and then the options are thrown at you. That's how you actually know that's how it works. Sometimes we all assume that as for this process, this is how it should work, but maybe no, that's not how it should work, right? So you need to be able to confirm your assumptions, right? You got to be able to confirm it. That's why you would liaison with key stakeholders within organization. As a product owner, as a business analyst, you interface with multiple stakeholders, right? Different project sponsors, different subject matter experts. You will liaise with both internal, external, and client users. And this is where you get to talk to them. They will share with you different processes, etc. And then all this information that they will be throwing at you, they'll be sharing with you, will confirm your assumptions, right? Very important. You don't have to, go with your assumptions as the final, process. You need to confirm with them. That is why they are there. They are there to help you, right? So don't just assume. Assumption, there's a popular statement out there. It can be a killer, right? Don't assume. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that you know every process and this is how it's supposed to work. Liaise with them. Your work is to interface with them, and then they'll get to share with you. And then you can confirm all those things that, prior to you meeting them, you had your own preconceived, ideas that this is how this process is supposed to work. But apparently that's not it, right? So confirm with them, right? Confirm with them. They will share with you different product direction, different product vision strategy, and how they want this product. There's a risk model in there. There might be something in there. There's going to be our risk tolerance or appetite for this process or for these applications, etc. I work on different product, and sometimes you need to liaise with some compliance team. You work with different team members, and they will share with you exactly what they are thinking for compliance and other regulatory frameworks that needs to be adhered to, etc. So very important. Don't just assume anything that this is all that there is or this is how it's going to work. It's important that you liaise with stakeholders and then they'll confirm your assumptions and other things like that. What does this feature need to do? Right? Basic questions. Again, very basic questions. What does this feature need to do? Basic questions. What is the end result of doing this, right? At the end of the day, if we process this application, if the person fills all these, data fields that are in there, and the person says submit, what next, right? Again, you got to be probing. You got to have that probing posture. What next? What next? So after that, what happens? So after this, what happens? So who gets what? How does this? Okay. So if they, submit this form, and then they filled all this key required field, etc. What about if they don't fill this required field? What's going to happen, right? So you got to be able to ask all these questions. What's the end result of doing this, right? So what happened next? What are the pieces of this feature? There are several components to different feature. There might be step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, etc. Right? Very important. Basic questions. Basic questions here. What needs to happen next, right? What must happen before, right? So there are preconditions, right? Something must exist, prior to we starting a process. What must exist? What should do we need to provision the end user's account, customer's account somewhere? Do we need to create something for them, or they can start it by themselves, create account and go through the process of creating account or creating application by themselves? What needs to happen before, right? So the preconditions are very important, and also the after the process again, what happens after that also is very important as well, right? So what if, think of all the alternative scenarios and ask questions about what should happen if those scenarios are true, right? And then what needs to be tracked? Should we be tracking something? Of course, when it comes to tracking, we're talking about the database here or some backend process in there. We're going to keep records of something, or the applications that are coming on the line, user the user behavior. There are tools these days, even when you come to our e-commerce platform, you come to the platform where you click first, we are monitoring, right? When users come on a platform, there are tools for, some analytics, like that, users come on a platform, we are studying, we want to be able to study their shopping behavior, the overall user experience, what do they click first? Why are they clicking on that first? We want to be able to understand that user behavior, the pattern in there. So we're tracking all these things, right? Very important. And then the last one of this, as we close waterfall session, is the why requirement, right? Why requirement. So why questions are great wrap-up questions, as they help to confirm that the requirement you just elicited map back to a need you identify when you scope the project, right? So whys are very, very important. This is why we're doing this. This is why, we have this out there. This is why we're changing this process, right, in there. Is there any other way to accomplish this, right? You got to ask them, is there any other alternative? Is there another way that this could be done? Very important. Does this feature meet the business need or solve the problem we're trying to solve? With every process, every product, everything that we're building out there, there's got to be some value proposition to it, right? There's got to be some strategic differentiation. We may look into the competitors' landscape. We may look into the competitors' world out there, and we may have different companies, organizations doing the same thing that we want to have out there. But what is our why, right? Why are we going to be? What's going to set us apart from this, other competitors out there, right? So very important that we know our competitors, we know their sign-up process, we know their onboarding, their enrollment, etc. What kind of key features do they have on their platform that we do not have? What's going to make people come to us, right? Not everybody has an appetite for a Mercedes-Benz. Some people like Hyundai. Some people that like maybe Toyota. Some people have appetite for Kia. They have different brands, Nissan, etc. Right? So what set us apart? Mercedes, they don't make cars for everybody. Toyota, they don't make cars for everybody. They have specific people, right? They solve, problem for specific, some, the demography, right? There's a key demography that is solving that kind of, mobility for, right? And so we got to be able to ask key questions. Why are we solving this problem? Is there even a data? Is there even a data that shows maybe customers are asking of this feature and that's why we want to do this? Is it a data-driven kind of decision? Is it just emotional driven, or is just pure company, policy and, this is our future. We've planned about this. This is the roadmap. This is where we're going with this. So what is our why for doing this? What are we solving? What is the pain point? What are the challenges that maybe internal team, customer service support team, they are facing? And so we need to build this use case, maybe customer support tool for them so they can administer their functions and administer their roles and responsibilities very well. They can manage all customer queries, etc. that are coming in. So again, why is very, very, very important, right? All right, guys. Now let's transition into our Agile for today. Strategy Agile for today. Okay. So let me move into Agile. So go grab water, 2 minutes, go grab water. If you need to drink something, we're going into our Agile. All right. I hope you guys have had a chance to drink, have some water to drink. So all this while, we've been talking about waterfall projects. You guys have done a good job. We started with, I think, embedded lending project, right? You guys work on the BRD, business requirement document. It's great. I saw some of the work that you guys have done, the quality of your work, how thorough, how detailed. Some of you, it was your first project, doing something like that, and I must applaud all of you. You guys did a good job. The second project, which was the church project, right? What was the second project that you guys work on? I believe it was a church platform, right?
We did a church platform.
Yes, the second one is the church.
Okay, all right. Second one is the church platform, and I think the third one was which one? Is it the e-commerce, or you guys did something before the e-commerce?
We did a pizza project.
The pizza project. Okay, all right. So you guys have done about 4 BRDs so far. Great. You guys have done 4 business requirement documents for different things. So the pizza platform, the church platform, the embedded lending, embedded finance, lending platform as well. And then the last project that you guys turned in was on Thursday, I believe, for the e-commerce. I've seen some of you. I started reading, I think, some of Clote and some other people, your work. I started looking into it before, I think yesterday. So 4 good projects, but the approach and everything that we've done so far was, waterfall, where, you listen to the keys, the stakeholder, what they're asking for, you put in a business requirement document, about 20, 30 pages, documentation, etc. Very comprehensive document about the project. It's great. You guys have done a good job. We're going to start with Agile. Now, again, I think I mentioned it in some of the previous project, that keep everything that you've worked on, because you'll be translating your work as we also transition to Agile. You're going to be bringing up all the epics that are in there. You'll be writing user stories for the key features that are in there in an Agile way, right? So don't lose track of it. Make sure that you have it. You have your BRDs with you. Make sure that you're not losing it. Very important, because you're going to be using it as I provision your account in Jira, etc. You guys will start writing user stories for all these features that you've done for all these 4 projects as well. So don't lose track of it, right? Very important. You're going to use it for writing user stories and epics, etc. But let's start with Agile today. So I hope you guys can hear me okay and see my screen as well. So just like, we started with the waterfall, project, every platform that you see, like, this one that you guys are looking at, State Farm platform, is an insurance company. They do a good job. It's a great organization. But of course, when you go to their platform, you see so many features out here. It's insurance, pay bill, claims, find an agent, etc. If you want a code, if you want something, you just bought a car and you wanted a code to see how much it's going to cost you to get an insurance on the right, waiting for you. You can come on here, start application, select some few things and enter some few data here. And then you can get a code, from here as well. So very, very important, right? But again, how this platform came together, waterfall can be used. Agile can also be used, right? Same thing. All these features, we can also use Agile. That's a key thing I want to say here. Wells Fargo is also another bank. I think is the 3rd or the 4th largest bank in the world, right? So Wells Fargo Bank is a big bank. They have great assets, especially mortgage. Most of the housing, mortgages here in America, it's all on them. They own all these mortgages in America. They are number 1. I think before Bank of America, and then maybe Quicken Loans or something like that. It's a big bank. But again, the point I'm trying to say here is that they have a lot of features here. They have a lot of tools on their platform, and how they build it, the delivery model. We can use Agile incrementally. So today we'll build personal banking features. We go to small business, commercial, financial education, day by day, step by step, incrementally, we can have all these features built out there, right? We don't have to take about, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years leave before we build all this platform together and then say we're going live. We can pick features by features and then one thing after the other, and then we have a platform like this, right? As Wells Fargo Bank. So what is an agile methodology or agile practice, right? So agile methodology is a practice that promotes continuous iteration, right? Continuous iteration of development and testing throughout the software development lifecycle of the project, right? In an agile model, both development and test activities are concurrent, unlike the waterfall model. So if you guys realize in the projects that you did, you start with requirement gathering, you do all those things, and then you move to design, go into development, QA, etc., etc. You follow that same pattern in Agile, and then in waterfall as well. We'll have to get something done complete, right? So if we're building something like the banking platform, we'll get all these features done, and then testing will commence. So one phase after the other, right? That is waterfall, one phase after the other. So when development work is done, then testing phase will commence. Then testing will also take up, the whole chunk of time, maybe 3 months or 6 months or something, and we are in testing phase sometimes for large projects, right? It can take 4 months and we're still doing testing. 5 months, we're still doing testing, but right, for large projects in waterfall. Last week I was talking to a company and they wanted me to come in and be a consultant for them, and they had planned for like 1 year for discovery, right? For the project discovery. So discovery is the same thing around elicitation, and then they have 4 years for the development and implementation of the project itself. And so, you can imagine. So same thing, waterfall, it can take like 6 months, 7 months for testing phase, and then we will move on to the next phase. But in Agile, both development and testing phase are concurrent. Why? Because it's a continuous iteration. We break the tasks into incremental fashion, incremental phases, right? We break them into pieces and say, no, even though we want to build an insurance or banking platform, but we can prioritize certain features and work on that these features, and then deploy these features out, and then work on the next one, etc. So incremental, continuous iteration process here. So that's the Agile methodology or the Agile practice, right? So the Agile software development is one of the simplest and also a very effective process to turn a vision for a business need into a software solution, right? Very simple, very effective, and I must say that a lot of organizations are now beginning to transition. There's a lot of agile transformation going on, right? They are moving from waterfall. Almost everybody started with waterfall, and today a lot of organizations, they are agile. Most organizations here in America, they are all pretty much agile. Those that are agile, they are thinking of it. Yeah, they talking to maybe vendors to help them transition and into agile, right? So agile is a term that is used to describe the software development approach that employ continual planning. Take note, guys, continual planning, number one, continual learning, improvement, team collaboration, evolutionary development, and early delivery, right? It encourages flexible responses to change. So we're talking about change not too long ago entirely. We're talking about how we should accept change and adapt to new change from stakeholders, etc. Agile, luckily for us, it encourages and is very flexible when it comes to response to change, right? If a stakeholder wants to change, go a different course and ask, wants us to do a different thing, and they were struck by a light bulb, lightning, and they have a different dream vision. But by the next day, Agile encourages us to be flexible with them and be able to respond to change, right? As and when They feel like, hey, we're gonna do this. All right. So in Agile, we have what we call the Agile Manifesto, right? We have the Agile Manifesto. These are the core values, core principles on which the Agile methodology or development approach is established, right? So the Agile Manifesto, I'm giving you a hint, it's going to come in one day in our pub quiz, right? I'm going to call names and say, give me one of the Agile, manifesto, and you're going to tell me, you will have to tell me one of the Agile Manifesto. So number one here, individual and team interactions over processes and tools, right? Agile sort of, aligns with the fact that, we should prioritize individual and team interactions over processes and tools and, what are we going to use for this, etc. Agile says that, let's talk to people. People are very important, individuals, team members, stakeholders. Let's get them involved in the project itself on a day-to-day basis. And let's prioritize that over processes, right? So if you look at the waterfall, you start with requirement gathering, where you start liaising with, stakeholders and you start talking to them. And then when that phase is done, it's completed. You move on to the next stage, design, where you start talking to the development team, and you guys start talking around technical feasibility discussions, and you start getting into grooming, refinement of the product feature sets, start talking and taking deep dive into the complexity of the feature, the amount of work required, and risks and assumptions, dependencies, etc. No, in Agile, we say that all those processes is fine with waterfall, but here we want to be able to connect on a daily basis, touch with people, let's prioritize, not follow a certain process, a certain, rules and say from this step, that's it. We are done with that step. Let's go to the next phase. Let's go to phase 3. Let's go. No, here, Agile Manifesto says number one, individual and team collaboration, right? Interactions over what? Processes and tools, right? Tools are great, processes are great, but that is not our priority here, right? Number 2, working software over comprehensive documentation. Let me see in the chat box that you guys are following me so far. Let me see a yes from everybody in the chat box. Let me know that you guys are following me so far. Let me see a yes in the chat box. I want to make sure that I'm not talking to myself. You guys are still my audience. You guys are listening in and tuning as well. All right, great. So the second one is working software over comprehensive documentation. Working software over comprehensive documentation. So in Agile, the priority here again is about, is this feature working as expected? The customers can use it. Does it deliver value for the customer? We don't want to sit down for a whole year and then do the discovery phase, requirement elicitation, and write about 30-page, 50-page, 70-page comprehensive document for the project. No, we want to see features work, right? Our priority here is working software over comprehensive documentation, right? A working software over what? A comprehensive documentation. Documentations are good, right? But that is not our priority here, right? And so in Waterfall, you guys did BRDs, business requirement documentations. In Agile, there is nothing like a BRD documentation, right? We don't care about business requirement documentation. In Agile, nobody's going to write SRS, system requirements, design specifications and all the other types of documentations. No, in Agile, none of that. We prioritize a working software over what? Comprehensive documentation. Looks like Agile sounds good, right? Was it my July batch or maybe April batch or something where we start talking about this? Like, oh man, that's awesome. We're not going to be writing BRD documentation. Yes, it's a working software. Goodbye to wireframes. So Reed says goodbye, no more BRDs. And Agile is working software over comprehensive documentation. That is our priority. We don't care about BRDs. We don't care about that. It's not our priority. We don't need it, right? Not that documentation is not good. It's good, for reference points, for us to have something that we can always go back, etc. We captured this feature in there, etc. But in Agile, again, the priority here is all about what? Documentation, BRDs, and etc. Right? Number 3, the Agile Manifesto. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, right? Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Now, in waterfall, there's a lot of emphasis, right? There's a lot of emphasis on, negotiating, contract negotiation and closing an agreement. And we want to sign this. Did you approve this? Okay, let's sign it. Okay, this is how much it's going to cost you for us to develop this for you. This is going to be, the contract, let's sign this agreement. And then stakeholder will sign and everybody's happy. Yes, we've signed this. We have also given you our word that it's going to take 6 months. It's going to take 1 year for us to complete this project for you. So we're also going to work with our schedule and make sure that we're able to deliver on time for you, etc. So contract negotiation is more important in, waterfall. There's a lot of emphasis on that, and if the stakeholder come in the next day during the solicitation process and say, oh, I want this feature change, they'll be adding more hours, right? The team will be adding more. Oh, then it's going to cost you more money. It's going to cost you this. In Agile, we say that is important, but for us, that is not so much important, but we want to be able to collaborate with the customer on daily basis, right? Every day. We want to be able to work with you. And the contract negotiation is fine, for us to be able to have some set agreement that this how this project is going to go. It's going to be the trajectory of this project. It's okay. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But for us in the Agile setting, customer collaboration, we want to be able to interact with the customer every day. We don't just want to talk to the customer at the face of requirement station, and that's it. The customer does not hear back from us again until we're ready to demo the feature to the customer. No, that is not how we want to go here in Agile. Here, we want that frequent interaction, frequent, communication with the customer. As a matter of fact, we want to be able to collaborate with the customer in this process, right? That is the idea and a key core value for what Agile methodology, right? And the last one here for the core values or the manifesto is that responding to change over following a plan, right? Responding to change over following a plan. So in waterfall, again, it's very stringent. Step 1, step 2, this is the plan, this is the SDLC, we're going by this, and we are not changing anything. There's a process. So we're going by this, we're going by the books. It's okay to go by the books. It's okay to be compliant. It's okay to follow the rules, etc. But here in Agile, the manifesto says that responding to change, we got to be able to embrace change. We got to be able to entertain the thoughts, the ideas of our customer, of our stakeholder, right? If they want to change something, say, no problem, come, let's sit down, let's talk about it. What do you want to change in this feature, right? At the end of a sprint, now we're talking about sprints sometime very soon. When we're ready to ship out something, we need maybe 2 weeks sprint cycle, etc. We demo to the customer first, and we say, hey, what do you think about this? This is what you say you wanted. We've developed this. This is how it works. Does everything look okay? Is everything looking good? And the customer will say, yeah, this is exactly what we wanted. Or maybe no. I think there's a complete departure from what we asked for. You guys have taken a departure from the overall expectation for that feature. This is not what we expected. We wanted this feature to do this, to do A, to do B, to do C, to do D, etc. Right? So again, when the customer says this, when the stakeholder says this, we're going to say, oh, okay, that's cool. Responding to change, right? We're not going to fight with you. It's not a fight. We are not in a fight, This is not a boxing ring, right? Here, we're responding to change over following a plan, right? Very important. So guys, the 4 key core values, right, that underpins Agile, right? These things, you guys have to know it by heart, right? You guys have to know this, just like that. By the snap of the finger, it should be there, right? Individual and team interactions over processes and tools, number one. Number two, working sort of a comprehensive documentation. You guys need some clarity, so you guys understand this very well. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Again, you guys need to understand this. Responding to change over following a plan, right? Again, you guys need to know this as well. This is what the Agile Manifesto, right? All right, moving on. So there are key frameworks when it comes to Agile, right? A popular one, there are two popular ones, Kanban and Scrum. When time permits that, maybe I will add maybe some other framework that are gaining popularity these days as well. But the two frameworks in Agile that are very popular, we have the Scrum framework and then the Kanban framework as well. So let's look at these two, Scrum versus Kanban. And you guys should be able to understand these two framework, right? So you go into an Agile environment, the team might be implementing maybe Scrum. It might be a Scrum team. Sometimes so there might be a Kanban team, or they can be a Scrumban. That is also there. It's sort of like a hybrid type of framework where people, they observing some key ceremonies of Kanban, and they're also observing some key they've adopted some key principles from Scrum as well. So we call this type of teams Scrumban, right? It's not the best, guys. I'm going to tell you guys right up front. It is not the best, right? But again, some companies, they are in between a Kanban and a Scrum, right? A Kanban and Scrum. And so that's why we call them a Scrumban. And some companies, too, they are in between waterfall. Let me also say that right here, right? I just remembered. They're in between waterfall and Agile. So they call themselves Wagile, right? So they're observing some key things in that's a very bad practice by some organization, right? They're observing some key principles when it comes to waterfall. And again, they're holding tight to those waterfall background. Whilst they also want to be better, they also want to adapt, Agile, but they're still doing some of the things that, you would see typically of waterfall environment. But, again, they want to be in the 21st century, but they're not there yet. And so they are practicing one or two things when it comes to what you call it, Scrum, Agile, etc. as well, right? So yep. So Kanban. So let's start with Kanban. So Kanban here, team focus on reducing the time it takes to take a project as a user story from start to finish. They do this by using Kanban. And so I see somebody joining and leaving and joining back again. I think it's either he's having issues with his internet or something. Let me admit him. I see him going off and on, coming back in. Anyways, so Kanban board, the team does not have a set, kind of duration for a task to be completed. When they start something, whenever that they start, whenever they finish, that's okay. That is Kanban, right? They start a story, a feature, they start working on it. When they are done, that's it, they are done. And then they move on to the next one, right? So they have different streams of work, tasks that needs to be done. They have balls, that sort of improves the flow of how sequence of how work is being done. So they pick up one feature, they work on it, and then when they're done with that feature, they move on to the next feature, right? Scrum is very different. So Scrum, Scrum is very different. With Scrum, teams commit to shape working software through a set of intervals that we call sprints, right? So in Scrum, we say, no, we're not just going to start something and just expect that, we get this done here or there, but we will rather have some timelines we'll rather have some set intervals or set, timelines and say, the popular timelines is we have 2 week cycle, sometimes a month, other organizations, they do monthly, right? So they will commit to a certain set time or certain intervals, and say 2-week sprint cycle, or maybe a monthly sprint cycle, right? So that means every 4 weeks, they will commit to a certain number of features, and then they will start working on these features. And every month they will ship these features out. So that when I say they will ship these features out, that means these features will be deployed live. It will go into production environment. Customers can start using these features, right? So that is the idea here, right? So they'll commit to a certain number of features, and we'll come into all this committing to a certain number of features, etc. Later on. But the idea is that timelines, right? We have these timelines in Scrum. So 2-week cycle or maybe 4-week cycle, right? The idea of Agile, breaking some incremental tasks, picking some few features, working on them, prioritizing on these features, and then ensuring that team members are committed to these features, and then you take it out to the market. In 2-week cycle, when you're using Scrum, or still in Scrum, it can be a 4-week cycle as well. That's a monthly release cycle as well. So that's the difference between Kanban and then Scrum. There are other frameworks out there like Scaled Agile and some other things like that out there. So again, just like you guys saw, we did in Waterfall. So when we say calendar of activities, we can have 2 weeks cycle. So maybe February 2021, Monday 1st, when we say that, we're doing 2-week cycle, that means from the 1st to the 12th, Friday the 12th of February, right? So that is 2 weeks. So by Monday 15th, we're starting a new sprint, right? Monday 15th, we're starting a new sprint. So a new sprint will start if we are abiding or we're going with a 2-week sprint cycle. So 15th to 26th, that's going to be another sprint as well. So we start with a 15th, that's a beginning of a new sprint, and then we go all the way to 26, right? So 26 is going to be the end of that second sprint, and then we're done. And then we move on to the next sprint. So that is the idea of a 2-week sprint cycle. And some organizations too, they have a 4-week sprint cycle. So what that means is that they can start from the 1st and then it will end 26. Let me see in the chat box if you guys are following me on this calendar of sprints and set of time intervals. Let me see a yes, yes, yes in the chat box that you guys are following me so far with a sprint cycle. All right, great. I see from a couple of people, yes, yes, yes. So you guys are following me so far. Great. All right, moving on. In Agile, we have some ceremonies that we observe. We have some ceremonies that we observe, right? And I have some of the ceremonies here. I'm going to be talking about some of these ceremonies as well. So we have some ceremonies that we observe. We have some ceremonies that we observe in Agile. So we have daily standard meeting, we have product user story grooming meeting, we have retrospective meetings, we have sprint planning and kickoff meeting, we have sprint, user storytelling and estimation meeting, we have sprint review meetings, we have sprint demo meetings as well. In all, we have 4 key ceremonies that are really observed. We have daily standard meeting, sprint planning, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. But some of these ceremonies too can be observed as well. So let's start with daily stand-up meeting, right? So let's start with daily stand-up meeting. Some organizations, they call it daily hurdle. You go to different companies, they have different names for it. You might see a different name. Don't be surprised. It's still the same meeting. The objective or the goal for the meeting does not change, right? So daily stand-up meeting, let me start with that one first, right? So typically, daily stand-up meeting is supposed to last 15 minutes, right? Daily stand-up meeting is supposed to last 15 minutes. It's not supposed to go beyond 15 minutes. Sometimes companies can schedule for 30 minutes. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, right? The idea here of daily stand-up meetings is that team members, that is Scrum team members, development team members will come together every day at the same time. Usually people do this around 9 a.m. in the morning, sometimes 9:30 as well, sometimes 10 o'clock. Usually daily stand-up meeting, some type of meeting that you do late in the afternoon or late in the day, right? Keep it in mind. I want you guys to keep this in mind. So daily stand-up meeting is the first thing that needs to be done. There are 3 blocks or 3 key components of a daily stand-up meeting, right? So when team members come on the line and get out on the platform, we take turns, right? We go around the table. Usually it is there the development team and then the QA team members, quality assurance engineers team members, right? So they'll go around the table and three things is what they will provide. They will talk about what they did the previous day, what they're going to be doing today, and number three, whether there are any impediments, whether there are any blockers for them, anything that is hindering or impeding on their progress, right? So again, write this down, guys. Three things, right? Daily stand-up meeting. Number one, they will share with the team. So John, let's say John will be on the line and say, yeah, yesterday I started with this API for this product. I started working on this. Today I'll still continue to work on this feature and then, work on some endpoints. I'm designing some endpoints. I'm working on this A, B, C, D, whatever. And then you say, and I do not have any blockers, right? So that means he has completed that three. Yes, what he work on, what he's going to be working on today, and there are no blockers. There are no showstoppers, right? It doesn't have any impediment, right? So that's it. And then we'll move on to maybe Reed. Reed will say, yesterday I started working on this feature for the use case. The use case management system. I started working on this. Today, I'm still continue working on this. And I do not have any blockers. So we go around the table and then Samuel Clote will come in and say, Samuel will say, oh yeah, yesterday, I started working on this reverse mortgage feature where I started looking at the 6 cities code. I started working on the Black Knight APIs, etc. And today I will still continue with that. But I do have a challenge with this. I think that A, B, C, D is not really clear, and we need to maybe work with the business to be able to understand maybe some information about this. It's still not clear to me. So when Sammy says this, he has a blocker, he has an impediment, and so what must be done? We need to make sure that we escalate the issue, make sure we get clarity for him so that he can work. Keep in mind, if he's blocked, that means he's not going to be able to progress, and it's going to impact what if he's blocked for a couple of hours or for the whole day or something. It might impact negatively on our sprint, right? We don't want that to happen. And so if somebody has a blocker, a showstopper, something that needs to be clarified, is impeding on his progress of work, we need to find answers for him, right? We got to find answers for Sammy so that he can move on and work, right? So we go around the table, Penelope will come and say, yeah, yesterday I started doing this. Let's say Penelope is a tester, is a QA engineer. And they say, yeah, I started testing around this feature. Today, I'll still continue with this, and I'll start with this feature as well today. And I don't have any blocker. I don't have any showstopper. So daily stand-up meeting, it is sort of like a Stardust type of meeting, but there are key things that we want to hear, right? So we go around the table, everybody will talk about what they're working on the previous day, and how it went, and today what they're going to focus on. And then if there are any showstopper, if there's any impediment, whatever, a blocker for them, they need to talk about it, and then we'll move on. Sometimes, people, they like talking, right? They want to talk and talk about something else, and so sometimes some companies that, they schedule some of this meeting for like 30 minutes, they will have the first 15 minutes for the real daily stand-up meeting, and then they will take the rest of the 15 minutes within the 30 minutes block as a parking lot time, right? But the idea of parking lot is that if you have something to discuss or something to talk about it, and it's not part of your status, when we go into parking lot, you can share with us whatever you want to talk about. The idea is that we want to be able to free all the other members so that they can move on and go and do their work. They don't have to be on the call to listen to all your, stuff that you want to talk about, right? So the idea of the parking lot is that, if I realize that maybe Reed is saying something, but it is completely out of, whatever he's giving, I'll tell Reed, hey, Reed, no, this is a parking lot. We'll take this in the parking lot, right? And then we'll move on to the next person. So the next person, maybe Joseph, we'll go out with status. We'll move on to the next person, maybe Daniel will give his status. And then whilst we are all done with it, we will say that, all right, now we're going to parking lot. So if Reed is the only person that has an issue that needs some clarification, Reed can stay on. If, let's say, Penelope does not have to be on this call in the parking lot because nothing that Reed is talking about does not impact on his work or impact on anything, he's free. I mean, she's free to go. The idea is that we do not want to, hold on people. We do not want to sort of, detain them, right, unnecessarily, whilst they don't have to be on these 15 minutes, talking about, jazz, right? So that's the idea of parking lot. So a lot of times, meetings are scheduled. They have the first meeting as the real daily standard meeting, and then the rest of the 15 minutes is going to be the parking lot, right? So don't be surprised if you go into organization, start working, and then you see parking lots, don't be surprised. But again, sometimes teams don't have the parking lot at all. If you have issues, just discuss it, offline with other key stakeholders or other key members and just talk about it as well, right? We want to make sure that we are productive with a 15 minutes time block with our daily stand-up meeting. All right. Let me see the chat box if everybody is clear with the daily stand. Let me see a yes, 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 yes in there. And then I'll move on to the next one. Let me see in the chat box. You guys are following this. All right. Great. All right. Let's move on to grooming, right? We have grooming sessions. We have grooming meetings. We have grooming meetings. Let's talk about grooming. So, as new features are going to be built, we're going to have new enhancements, new application features, etc. We're going to have grooming meetings, and grooming meetings usually we schedule this for like maybe an hour, 30 minutes, depending on the frequency how this is being done in the course of the week, right? So sometimes we can schedule grooming meetings twice a week, sometimes if it's twice a week, I guess sometimes it's just 30 minutes, right, per each session. Right. So maybe Tuesdays, maybe Thursdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 30 minutes each, it can happen. Sometimes too, it can be once a week, maybe every Thursday, every Wednesday or somewhere, maybe an hour block, maybe 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. or something like that. We can have grooming session as well. Grooming session, what are we doing here when it comes to grooming, right? I think I have a slide for that, but let me talk about this momentarily, like in some few minutes. So grooming meeting, this is typically led by the product owner or maybe the Scrum master, right? Grooming sessions, usually by the product owner, you will lead a grooming session. And then sometimes too, the Scrum master can also lead this session as well. But the idea of the grooming session is that the product team, you want to share with the development team what may be coming in the pipeline, like a feature that they will be working on maybe sometime very soon, in the near future, right? Future. They'll be working on this, the product feature, right? So you get to share with them, and then you guys groom it, refine it, right? So usually, typically, when you're sharing a feature at the very start of, everything, it is at a very high level, like, 30,000 feet, high level. And so you guys have to, sort of decompose it, flesh it out, sort of refine it, bring it down. So let's say, as a company, we say we want to build maybe a money remittance application, right? That's a very high level, very, very high level. What are we talking about with remittance? So we need to do grooming on this. So we want to refine this feature. So by refining it, we want to talk about it in detail, right? Take a deep dive. We say, okay, are we talking about just internal transfers where customers of the bank or the organization, they can transfer people to, they can transfer money to other members or other customers of the bank? Or are we talking about external remittances? People can transfer money to other individuals, in different organizations alike, as well. Or even we talk about international remittances. I can be in America and I can transfer money to somebody in Ghana, somebody different bank, etc. So remittance is very broad, very huge, right? So, and I'm sure, whilst we start, taking a deep dive into this, we'll begin to drill down properly exactly what we are talking about, or what component of remittance are we talking about here, right? So maybe international money remittance, send money across borders, across continents, etc. Cross country, type of remittance, or maybe just internal type of transfer. If I'm a member of the bank or customer of the bank, and Reed or Penelope or maybe Isaac or maybe Daniel is also a member of the bank, customer of the bank, I can simply grab Isaac's, customer account number and say, give me your account number, let me transfer the money to you, right? And I can go ahead, initiate a transfer. If I go to that feature on my platform, and I'll simply transfer money from my bank balance, and then transfer to his account number, and he'll get it, right? Because we are all within the same bank. But it's a different ball game altogether if we need to remit or we need to transfer outside of the bank, or if we need to transfer to an international account. There are key processes that are in there. There are compliance stuff that are in there. There are reconciliation and process that are in there. For instance, if my balance is 5,000, and if I transfer 3,000 from that bank balance to maybe Isaac or to maybe Daniel, if I transfer 3,000, what should happen with my reconciliation? Then that means my balance should reduce to 2,000, right? We don't want to transfer and then I'll still have 5,000 in there. So all these business rules and all this reconciliation stuff that needs to happen when transfer is done, how do we balance it? How do we do this, etc. Isaac's bank account will also be added, to it. There are so many processes that are in there, right, behind the scenes or back end, right? We got to be able to understand all these things, right? How does it happen? Does it go immediately? Does it take some few minutes? Is it going to reflect instantly, etc.? If it's going across borders, how does it happen? Does it happen overnight, 24 hours? There's so many processes that we need to understand, right? So grooming of the feature is when we come together as a team, we talk about the feature, and then we talk about some key things, right? Number one, we look at our current state of infrastructure. We look at our current state of architecture. We look at our overall technology stack, and then we talk about it to see if all these things I've mentioned will be able to support the direction of the product that we're trying to build. And again, we also look at the complexity of this feature, the amount of work that's required. Do we have the wherewithal? We have everything that we need to be able to execute this feature as well. So as a team, we need to talk about all this. That's grooming. We are grooming this feature. We will sort of want to bring this feature to a level where the expectation of the feature is explicit enough, it's clear enough to everybody, right? We understand exactly what we are expecting out of this. Very, very, very important, right? Very, very, very important process that is in there. So, as a team, we talk about this and we talk about risks. We talk about dependencies, any assumption that we should be aware of, any assumptions and risks that we should be concerned about or we should be worried about, etc. So we take a deep dive, right? Deep dive into this feature. That is what grooming, right? And in Agile, we have something we call definition of ready. By definition of ready, that means we want to be able to bring these features to a stage where other team members can point these stories and they can estimate on them. So if the stories are properly groomed, well detailed, etc., we know exactly what we're doing with this feature. We can look at it and say, looking at this feature is a 3 point. And I'll talk about estimation very soon. So, don't get lost. Just follow me. We'll talk about this feature and say, looking at this feature, this is going to be a 5-point story or 3-point story or maybe 1-point story, etc. Right? So, grooming. We bring it to a readiness state, right? A readiness state is very, very important. So we don't want to rush and just bring something out of the door and let everybody start, working on it. No, we need to make sure that the feature that we're trying to build is properly refined enough, right? Properly groomed enough, and we know exactly what we're doing with it. Sometimes when it comes to grooming, it is not everybody that's going to be on that meeting, or we're going to have a limited audience, right? We can have a limited audience when it comes to, grooming. And so sometimes for large organizations and large teams, we may have a solution architect, we may have, other front-end leads, back-end leads, etc., and a UI, UX engineer, etc., to be on this call. It was not going to be the entire large audience, like entire development team. We don't want to hear from everybody how or the approach we should go about with this feature, right? When we open the door wide, everybody's going to be saying something about how we can achieve this, and we don't want that to happen. We just want a limited audience, and then we take their opinions and we refine it, and then we move ahead, right? So the back-end lead can be in the meeting. The front-end lead can also be in the meeting. The solution architect or somebody who's the engineering lead or something can also be in that meeting as well. And then we do the grooming, right? Sometimes too, if it's a fairly small team size, why not? We can have all the development team be part of this, right? So that is the idea of grooming, guys. That is the idea of grooming. So grooming a story, and then what did I forget to mention? Grooming a story, making sure that, you know, if it's too big, we can break it down enough to make sure that it's granular, you know, enough, and make sure it's well detailed. That is all the idea about grooming. All right, let's move on to retrospective meeting. Let's move on to retrospective meeting. Let's move on to retrospective meeting. Okay. All right, so retrospective meeting is also another type of meeting that is observed by the team. So during a retrospective meeting, the question is what happened, right? So retrospective meetings is at the end of every sprint, right? So you guys remember I talked about this not too long ago, that we will observe maybe a 2-week sprint cycle, maybe 4-week sprint cycle, right? So retrospective meeting, whether 2 weeks or 4 weeks, at the end of the day, at the end of the retros meeting, we want to be able to gather together. You guys remember when I talk about Agile, I talk about continuous learning, right? You guys remember I just said it not too long ago. That it's about continuous learning. The idea of retrospective meeting, or what we call retro meetings for short, is that as a team, we want to be able to sit back and say, okay, this is what we did for this past sprint, the past 2 weeks. What number 3? So 3 things that, you know, we want to talk about in retro meetings. Number 1, what went well, right? What went well as a team? Number 2, what did not go that well? And number 3, what can we start doing? What can we start doing, right? So 3 things in retro meetings. Just as I mentioned 3 things in daily stand-up meeting. For retro meetings, do 3 things, right? So number 1, what went well? Something went well, you know, we want to talk about it, you know. It's not always good news, it's not always bad news, right? So something went well, we can talk about it as well. So what went well? Number 2, what did not go well, or what do we need to stop doing, right? In retro meetings, where there's something that we need to stop doing, something that does not help the team. So what do we need to stop doing, or what didn't go well? And then number 3, the third thing is that, you know, what can we start doing? So what can we start doing here means that there might be a new technique, a new way that we can improve on our process as a team, our development approach. You know, we can learn a new method, something. It could also be a new technique, something that is out there. Agile is always about continuous improving, continuous learning. We always want to get better, right? We don't want to say that we already know what we need to know, and that's it. We will not learn again. No. Agile, of course, the agility, right? It comes from the word agile, right? You know, being agile, being always be able to like move, you know, learn. What can we improve? What can we learn? You know, what can we start doing, right? So what do we need to start doing? Any new ways of getting things done better for us to be more efficient? Why not? Sure. Let's learn it. Let's get better, right? So 3 things, guys, keep in mind all the time in your retrospective meetings. It's going to come up. I know a lot of you guys will be working in agile environment. You're going to have retro meetings. You're going to be part of these retro meetings. Don't be surprised, right? That, oh, I didn't know about this. Don't say that. I've never heard of retrospective meeting before. I don't know what we're going to be talking about here, right? So I don't want you to do that. So retrospective meeting, you know, be sure to understand the objective of what's going to transpire and what's going to happen during the retro meeting, right? Very, very important. So that's it. That's it for retro meetings. Retro meetings is the same thing. Sometimes we schedule it for 30 minutes. Sometimes to a team that is very talkative, like, you know, they talk a lot, we can schedule for this for an hour. But again, we want to keep it short, straight to the point, and make sure that, you know, we are able to disperse people, let them go back to their work and start working, right? So the idea of also retro meetings is that we do not want to have this meeting 5 days, 4 days. You know, can you please mute? So the idea of retro means that we don't want to have this ceremony observed 5 days or 4 days after the sprint, the sprint that was in flight, has ended, right? We want to have it immediately. Sometimes some teams are crazy. Sometimes they want to do it even at the last day of the sprint. Sometimes some teams will have it maybe the first day of the new sprint, and then we look back to what we did the previous sprint, right? So the idea is that, we want to learn, we want to be adaptable, we want to learn new ways. And so if you stay in 5 days, then what is the point? What are you learning into the new sprint, right? So the idea is that as we're beginning a new sprint, we want to have some takeaway lessons from the previous sprint, and then we want to adapt these new lessons so that we can improve on the current sprint that we have just started, we have just commenced. Right. So that is the idea of retrospective meetings. So you do not want to do it 3 days, 5 days after the old sprints. That means you're already 5 days into the new sprint. So what new ways do you want to improve? Right. So that is the idea. So the idea is that we want to have this as quick enough right after the sprint that is in flight, has come to an end. And then we want to be able to incorporate some of the new techniques and new things that we've learned and what didn't go well in this previous sprint into the new sprint, right? That is the idea. So retrospective meeting, looking back to what we have done the previous sprint and say, hey guys, it could be better. We could be a more efficient or a better team if we observe this and do this more in a more better fashion, a more better way. That is the idea of retrospective meetings, right? Of retrospective meetings. So again, don't stay on it too much. Some of you guys might be a Scrum Master. You guys will be leading this ceremony. Make sure that you have your objective clear enough, to them that, hey, this is what's going to happen. Sometimes to retro meetings, there's going to be voting as well. People vote on different things during retrospective meetings, right? If there's a new idea, a new way of doing things, we want to vote on it and say, okay, let's start with this one first. The idea of retro meetings is also that you want the team to be able to collaborate and promote teamwork, etc., learn together and collaborate together, etc. They are all ways of improving the agility and then the healthiness of the team, etc. Right. So that's the idea of retrospective meeting. All right. Moving on to sprint planning, sprint kickoff meeting. Let me see in the chat box if retro meetings is clear enough. Let me see chat box. Yes. That you guys get it. Let me see in the chat box. You guys are following along, and I am not talking to myself on this Saturday morning. I want to be sure that I'm not talking to myself. You guys are with me. You guys get it? Okay. All right. Let's go on. All right. Let's go on to sprint planning, right? Sprint planning and sprint kickoff meeting. Sprint planning and sprint kickoff meeting. This is also another very important ceremony that's also observed during, in an agile world, an agile environment, right? Sprint planning. So sprint planning basically, usually we can start, we can have a meeting set up for this. Sometimes at the beginning of the sprint, at the beginning of the first day of the sprint, sometimes some teams use that the daily stand-up meeting for that purpose as well. But we can always, schedule a separate or a standalone meeting for sprint planning as well. So sprint planning is when we talk about, sometimes at the beginning of the sprint, we talk about the objective of the sprint, that, hey, this sprint, we have 15 stories to work on. We're going to be doing this story, going to be doing that story A, story B, this is what we're doing, story C, etc., etc. So we talk about all the aspirations and all the goals, visions for the new sprint, and then we plan along. And then the sprint kickoff, what happens is that of all the stories that we're going to be working on, features that we're working on, team members will assign some of these stories to themselves, right? So let's say John will assign feature A, they will assign it to themselves. Maybe Joshua will also do something. Penelope will assign a story to yourself. Daniel will assign a story to yourself, and Reed will assign a story to himself as well. And it's just we're kicking off with a new sprint as well. So that's the objective. Sometimes too, we schedule this separate date, different times where we get together, and then of course we talk about maybe the next sprint. These are some of the stories that we're going to be taking in. This is what we're going to be working on as well. It's all good. We prep the backlog. So what we're doing is that we're prepping the backlog. The product owner must ensure that all the items in the product backlog are properly. They've all properly have been groomed. They are properly written. Stories, your stories are complete. Acceptance criteria has been defined in there. We'll be talking about acceptance criteria very soon, right, guys? We have prioritized this. There are no dependencies, or if there are dependencies in the stories or the features have been properly identified as well. So sprint plan is basically prepping the backlog, right? So sprint planning is basically prepping the backlog, making sure that the backlog items that we're going to be working on, they meet a certain standard, and stories are well detailed and well written enough, right? So very important. Sprint planning as well, we can also look at measuring of user stories. So the product owner, with the help of the team, will also need to ensure that each story has been sized properly. So if you're going to start working on something, make sure that everybody's aligned, stories are properly been sized. If it's 2 point, 3 point, or etc., we've sized the story very well, and everybody is, the expectation of it is also is known to them as well, right? If there's a story that is too big that we need to split it, we can go ahead and split that, quickly as well, and make sure that everybody has enough work to do. So that's the objective of the sprint planning meeting, right? We want to make sure that the team members have enough work to do. It meets their sprint velocity, right? We have a lot of work to do. If there are new information, new updates about the story that we're about to start working on, we can go ahead and provide that information at this point. If there are no updates, that's fine too. If there are any known issue, concerns, record, feedbacks and discoveries, we want to make it known as well. We talk about the current velocity of the sprint, how many stories we're working on, or something that got changed in the previous maybe retrospective meeting. There's a proposed velocity, etc. We want to make sure that we are properly aligned before we commence the sprint, right? So that is the idea of the sprint planning. That's the idea of the sprint planning. That idea of sprint planning. Let me look at my time here. How many minutes do I have? Okay, we still have about 12 minutes left. Let's talk about sprint storytelling estimation, right? So estimation meeting. So, sometimes some people use, and either way is fine. Some companies, some teams, they use the sprint planning meeting, and they actually use the grooming meeting to also do their estimation as well. Some companies do, they have separate meetings for estimation. So that means stories are groomed, we flesh it out, make sure it's well detailed, etc. That's done. We can schedule another meeting where we come on the call, and then we come on the bridge, and all that we do is to estimate, right? We estimate on the stories. It's fine. So estimation meeting, we come on the bridge, we come on the call, Zoom, whatever, and then all that we're going to be talking about these features. And then this time around, we are sizing them. By way of sizing, that means we're looking at each story, and then we're saying that, what is the effort that is going to be required to complete this feature, right? What is going to be the effort that is going to be required to get this work done, right? Every team, they have some team norms established. Some of the team norms might be sizing. How do we size? So we size by saying that maybe we have different techniques when it comes to sizing. We have T-shirt type of sizing. We have story point estimate, type of sizing techniques, etc. T-shirt sizing is just like you have a T-shirt, right? When you look at the back of your T-shirt, we have medium, we have large, we have small, we have extra large, etc. Right? So some teams, they use the t-shirt sizing as the way, as the go-to technique when it comes to sizing their features. And say this is large, this is medium, this is small, this is extra small, this is extra large, etc. Right? Some companies do, some teams do, they use story point estimation. So they have points. So they assign story points to some of the user stories that they have. So some stories might be 2-point story, 3-point story, 5-point story, 8-point story, etc. And when we maybe talk about story points properly, we can talk about, the Fibonacci series. So the idea is that, the combination of every previous point plus the other one will be the size for the new story. So what I want to communicate here basically is that they have points, right? So points, team members will just say 3 points, 5 points. And those, the 3 point, the 5 point that they're talking about, it means something to them because they've established those norms. So they could say that maybe 3 points means that it's 3 days of work, right? They could say 5 points. 5 point means that it's 5 days of work, right? They could say this story is a 1 point. It's a 1 day's work, right? They could say this story is a 2 point. So different teams, they have different meanings when it comes to story point estimation, right? And so the estimation meeting is for us to do the storytelling. We talk about the feature. This feature is for the internal money transfer. We want members to be able to sort of transfer money, do this, do that, do that. So they will look at it, and then team members will vote. Everybody will vote, right? Especially the development team members. They'll vote. We have the poker vote. There are apps for voting as well. Sometimes if you may want to make it fun with your team, you guys can incorporate some of these apps that are used for voting. Sometimes, team members will send anonymous message to the host of the meeting, to the Scrum Master, say, so they talk about story A, and then he will say, let's vote. And everybody will send their points to him. And then he will say that, oh, okay. And then the one that gets the highest score, the highest same point, maybe 3 points. You have 3 people or 4 people saying 3 points. We go with a 3 point, right? If somebody says something that is extreme and say 10 points, right? So everybody is saying 3 points. And then, Reed says, no, this feature is 8 points. Very extreme, but, very extreme from what everybody's saying. We will want to find out from Reed why he says it's 8 points. The reason is that Reed may have worked on something like that before, and he knows exactly what goes in. There are constraints, there are other things in there that will need to be done or will have to be taken care of before this feature can be completed and be developed. So he knows something that we did not know, right? So that's why he's saying 8 points. So we want him to maybe sort of share with us, why is everybody saying 3 points? And then you are the only person that is saying 8 points, right? He knows something that we do not know. And so we don't want him to share with us, why he says 3 points, or why he say 8 points, sorry. And then everybody is saying, 3 points, right? So Reed will go ahead and share that. Now, I've worked on a similar feature before in the past. We're going to need this vendor to provide this for us. We'll have to, sort of provision this before. We'll have to do some, database tags for this as well. After that, we'll have to maybe work on this endpoints, get method, we'll have to. So he will explain to us why, and all of this will take time. And so this is why he's saying this is going to take, this is going to be 8-point story. So now everybody will know, oh, okay. We didn't know. So now we know all these dependencies are in there. So this is why this story is going to take us. It's going to be 8 points, right? And if we all agree to it, everybody will say, oh, okay, then yeah. Okay, then we can go with 8 points, right? Then we simply go with 8 points, right? But other than that, usually what the number of team, as many of the team members will say, maybe 3 or 4, whatever, 5 points, whatever, we go with it, right? That is the idea for the estimation. So stories must be estimated way ahead. We have to be able to estimate this before we start, prioritizing them into a sprint backlog and start working on them. So this is why we have these meetings recurring, so that we can estimate stories that we've written and we can work on them, right? All right, let me hurry up and make sure that I can cover the next two before we hit the hour, and then tomorrow morning we continue. Let's talk about sprint review. The sprint review. Sometimes sprint review, in the agenda of sprint review, we have sprint demo, but I just wanted to separate sprint demo here, separate, so that maybe I can communicate it effectively to you guys as well. But in the sprint review, that is when we have the sprint demo as a part of the agenda for the sprint review, right? So make sure that you guys understand this very well. So sprint review, at the end of the sprint, sometimes we can come together. Sometimes even not even at the end of the sprint. In the middle of sprint, if we think that there's something happening that we need to change course or something, we can review the sprint and say that, oh, okay, looks like we need to change this. And sometimes at the end of the sprint, when we are done, we can invite stakeholders to come on this call, and then we'll talk about, the sprint as well, right? Sprint, that is a sprint review. This is not same as the sprint retrospective. Guys, I want you guys to, take note very well. I want you guys to, take note very well. This is not the same as sprint, the sprint retrospective, right? Sprint review is a meeting that happens at the end of the sprint cycle, and then members will come on, we inspect what was done during the last sprint and update the product backlog, and and even demo the feature to the stakeholders that are on the calls as well. Retro meetings is a more structured meeting just between the development team members, and we talk about, the things that I already shared with you guys, right? Performance and ways of improving things, right? But sprint review, we just review the stories that were done. Sometimes too, not all the stories are done. Some of the stories might, we may have to, it will be overlapping between the previous sprint that was in flight and then the current sprint that is coming up, because we could not get it done. It was not completed. And I'm giving you guys a hint. Next time there's going to be a problem of the day question where I'll talk about I'll ask you guys how you deal with a story that is overlapping between a sprint that has just ended and the sprint that is coming up. So keep in mind, there's going to be a question like that in the future, right? And I will ask everybody for their opinion, how you would deal with that. I'll ask you guys a story that will overlap, between sprints, right? So keep in mind, it's going to be a question. I'll need everybody to answer me on this one. So that's a hint, right? I'll give you guys a hint. All right. So yeah, the sprint review, we're talking about sprint review here. So we talk about all the things that has happened and stories that have been worked on, and make sure that, the backlog looks good. And then also demo as well to the stakeholder, right? We demo as well to the stakeholder and make sure that, we are appropriately aligned, we are on course with our sprint activity and the story that needs to work on, usually I think the product demo and the sprint demo takes the center stage of this type of meetings, right? Because that is the idea. We want to be able to see what was completed, what we were able to complete, and what we could not complete. And again, let me also say this out here that not a whole lot of companies, a whole lot of organizations observe, sprint review. Sometimes they don't do it, but it's good to have it. If you guys have a strong, stakeholders and they want to see what was done, make sure that, you come ready to discuss, what has been completed and what was incomplete, what you could not get done, and also review and refine the product backlog. So that is it for you guys. That's it for today. If I continue, we're going to go beyond our time given. I'm going to open the floor for just 2 minutes, right? I don't want to exceed the time. I'm going to open the floor for just 2 minutes for question and then call it a day. All right, guys, can I mute yourself? 2 minutes, I'm going to be done. If something that needs to be clarified, I'll have to take time. I'll just say I'll take it tomorrow.
Hello, Nana.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, please kindly go over quickly the difference between the sprint demo and the sprint review for me, please. I'm making some notes here.
Okay.
Demo, sprint demo, and then sprint review.
Okay. So the clear difference between the sprint review and the sprint retrospective, right? The sprint review, you talked about the retrospective and the sprint review, right?
No, the review and the sprint demo meeting.
That's so the demo, like I said, the demo is not a separate meeting. It's an agenda on the sprint meeting, right? But I just brought it out here so that you guys are clear, on this. I just wanted to make sure that you guys are, I can communicate effectively. The demo, I'll need to be able to bring it out so that I don't forget. That's the essence here. But sprint review and sprint retrospective, that's the difference that you need to get. That's a more important thing. So sprint review, the idea is that we focus more on the product, the backlog, what was done, what was not done, right? The sprint review focuses more on the product. Sprint retrospective focuses more on processes, right? Performance, team agility. We want to be able to look at our team performance, look at our team processes, and then change certain processes, etc. Right? So that's the key difference between sprint review and sprint retrospective, right?
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Anybody else? We have some 30 seconds. We have 30 seconds, guys. Anybody? Everybody's good? Everybody's good?
The third process in the retrospective meeting, what went well, what did not go well? The third one is?
The what went well, what did go well, and what can we start doing? Yeah,
sure.
What can we start doing? All right, everybody good? We have some 10 seconds left, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you, guys. We'll meet tomorrow, same time, and we'll take it out from there.